While wandering through the wasteland, you may come across one of the variety of drinking holes such as the Shamrock Tap House, where you can enjoy yourself a nice cold Quantum Nuka-Cola or even grab a Gwyneth Stout. But what if I was to tell you that alcoholism isn't the most dangerous thing to walk out the bar? Can you beat Fallout 4 with a pool cue? Like any great pool world championship story, there is a man behind the stick. A man so narrow-headed you could almost mistake it to being the tip of the pool cue. A man so malnutritioned and lean, he has necrophiliacs double taking. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Stick. Now, to be the most pathetic, dumb-lucked pool player in the entire Commonwealth, there are some specific stats that are needed to be used, starting with dumping 10 straight into luck, making him so lucky that even in his stupidity, he is rewarded. And to make it more of a noodle swinging affair, we drop 2 into strength, just giving me access to big leagues to give me somewhat of a hope to do damage, leaving me 6 points for perception and 7 for charisma, just in case I need to haggle my pathetic ass out of situations. Acting like I wasn't the one that caused the nuclear explosion to become the only pool player in the Commonwealth, I grab my pajamas and head to bed, only to be rudely awakened by a bald man that I hired to kill my wife after I found out she was having an affair with the Vault-Tec rep. Perception. Realizing that I have an irrational fear of giant insects, I rush through the vault like any sane man would do, knowing that I can't kill until I have my pool cue. Heading down the sanctuary, I got Cosworth to deal with my phobia and watch from behind, because we all know pool players love it from behind. Then I headed off to Red Rocket to befriend Dogmeat for one purpose only, to kill more insects, only to find that he'll prefer to kill himself. So off to Concord I headed to manhandle the first dead body I saw in hopes to finding the illustrious pool cue. With no such luck, I decided I'd try and befriend one of the raiders with a friendly gamer tag around the block. And before any friendship could blossom, Preston decided to turn him to dust. And I suppose I could thank him for taking care of the rest of the raiders too, because nothing screams more than bend me over the table and socket your balls inside me like a harness and a militia hat. Entering the Museum of Freedom, I found out what the real definition of freedom was: death. And as I ran around like a headless chicken in hopes of Preston performing as he did outside, I was left with no choice but to carry on my journey in search of a pool cue. With the idea of purchasing one in my head, it was off to the local diner to visit Trudy, where I offered her a helping hand getting rid of Simon and Wolfboy, but in reality all I did was cower behind the window and watch her take care of the problem herself. Thanking me for doing absolutely nothing, I was once again left disappointed to find that she doesn't even sell pool cues. So I went and slept with Dead Rad Scorpion, hoping that I'll wake up in the morning with my own little pool cue in my pants, only to find my logic was absolutely flawed. So I headed to Cambridge Police Station, watched iRobot take down a bunch of ghouls as I cowered behind the wall, to once again being thanked for my display of power and strength for doing absolutely nothing. It was off to ArcJet we go, and with my new toy boy by my side, anything was possible. Just for a little context, I was already an hour into Fallout 4 and still had no pool cue. That's an hour of watching people kill things for me. But miracles do happen. Through trial and tribulation, I finally acquired the pool cue, with most of my excitement leaving once I found out that it hits like an absolute wet noodle. It felt like the most sexually charged weapon in Fallout, with each hit feeling like a spank. I felt like I was spanking my enemies to death. Not slow and painful, but slow and pleasureful. So I spanked my way through ArcJet, pleasuring one synth at a time, thinking to myself how this is probably turning Dance on. So I burnt his sins away, acquired the deep range transmitter, freaked out a bit, and returned back to Gravy Train to finally help him with his crackhead problem. After the immense arousal from spanking all these men, it was time for me to spank an animal. God, this sounds so wrong. Long story short, I took Mr. Lizardman to the corner store and showed him my non-refund policy, making short work of something I thought would be a lot harder. As per usual, I went to Diamond City, violently smashed a computer keyboard to acquire Kellogg's key, robbed Ellie Perkins for all that she was worth, and lent a hand in killing a deranged lunatic. Life is good, but not as good as getting gangbanged by your old neighbors from Sanctuary. Miss Rosa, you feisty little devil. It was now time for Park Street Station, where I was to take on Tony Pepperoni and the Sourdough Boys. How does that old saying go again? Don't bring a knife to a gunfight? But what about a pool cue? Even Dino was quite surprised when I pleasured him to death. With Mr. Gadget now saved, and my willingness to hit a woman across the head with a piece of wood frowned upon by myself, it was time to break into Kellogg's house to stack things in a pot and forcibly get dog meat to smoke a cigar. On our way to Fort Hagen, we had our usual run-ins such as Whack-A-Mole and Junkie Yogi Bear, but this time there was a bit of a twist. I ended up getting ambushed by a bunch of Wish.com Bruce banners who were looking for a good spanking, and with a bit of dumb luck, showed them that my wood was a lot harder than theirs. With Fort Hagen in sight, it was now time to face my first real challenge. It wasn't the fact that I died over 50,000 times. It wasn't the fact that the pool cue just simply sucks ass. It was the fact that Nick abandoned me. He ran away.
Bye, have a great time.
Leaving me to single-handedly pretend that wood can actually damage metal, which I started to believe. Finally making it to Kellogg, Nick miraculously showed up with a fat man, thankfully missing the shot, allowing me to spank Mr. Invisible to death because he's been a bad boy. Grabbed his brain, remembered that dance was still waiting for me, cooked a raider on an old rusty stove, pretended to care what Dr. Calamari had to say, learned that Men in Black is not just a movie, which meant it was time for the glowing sea, and whilst I was on my way, I finally learnt the true potential of the pool cue. Now, shortly after this affair, I ended up finding a radio station that had been hindering my ears for a long while now. Feeling drunk off animal abuse, I decided to make my way inside and shut them up once and for all, only to realize it wasn't actually them and sparked a whole heap of guilt, so I made it look like nothing had happened.
Perfection.
Finally making it to the glowing sea, I took a drink from a Fanta puddle to then getting attacked by a bunch of rad scorpions, which I decided to take to Crater of Adam, watch the chaos unfold, give Sister Verena the burial she deserved, and promised Virgil a whole heap of things that I'm never going to do, and learnt about the Corsa chip, to then step outside his humble abode and cause my 15th act of animal abuse. Green Tech Genetics, a building of bullet abuse, death, and helping you build up on your insecurities. Pain was spelt with capital letters. The pool cue was hereby rendered useless, especially when I was getting taken from all sides and angles. So I did what any great pool player would do, and ran. I ran straight for the elevator, I ran straight for the Corsa, and ran straight for the synth, gave her a good spanking, threw her off the balcony, and got the Corsa chip. It was a job well done. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I also found this armor piece. An absolute godsend. Super duper mart. It was time for me to do a bit of shopping. And by shopping I mean ram the trolley into a bunch of ghouls, watch the Cirque du Soleil, learn about how Sully is an absolute shit worker, and find some suspicious teddy bear activity.
5 hours later.
After enough procrastination, it was now time to go and break into the railroad, to where I gave Tinker Tom the Corsa chip so I could breathe heavily down his neck, and took Glory down a dark alleyway just to show her the true meaning of morning glory. After waiting for me for a good 6 hours for my return, it was time to meet up with Paladin Dance once again, to only receive extremely mixed signals, which led into an extremely awkward vertibird ride. On board I learned how Maxim was pretty much the Commonwealth Hitler, I may have Parkinson's, and the fact that Cade rarely struggles with eye contact. With all the happy-dappy introductions all completed, it was time to rain genocide on the super mutants in Fort Strong, showing them that my pool cue was a harder piece of wood than their splintered filled board. And in most sense it was. I even had a friend show up to give me a little bit of a hand. But it wasn't until I got down to the basement where a lot of problems unfolded. Because let me be straight with you, the pool cue sucks when you're surrounded. It is just abysmal. And down the bottom of that basement, it was an absolute flood of super mutants. But I was lucky enough to have one play sit down and shoot, and also do the running man on a digger. Fort Strong was not an easy task, and it was really the catalyst for what was to come. Because boy, by the end of this run, I simply had enough. With everything sorted with the Brotherhood of Steel, it was finally time to enter the Institute. But this time around, I thought I'll do something a little bit different. Create the ultimate story arc. Pretend that I was here to join the Institute, speak to all the senior members, sniff Dr. Lee, and convince her that Virgil was still alive and that she should return back to the Brotherhood of Steel to carry on with anti-communist Prime, to then throw a glass vase in show of dominance, with the final action being spanking my own son to death and putting him to bed as if nothing had happened. The Chinese Hating Transformer was only a few steps away, which the electromagnetic actuators were easy enough to get. Along with the mini nukes, where I met a man who had a sex robot and also found out that elevators do not hurt. Dance's life was taken without question, while the resurrection of Glory and the decimation of the railroad was the cherry on top, leaving me with the most difficult task I was yet to face in Fallout, collecting the beryllium agitator. Now remember, the only thing that I can do is kill an enemy with a pool cue, no other way. Circling around the mass fusion tower while getting shot at and not being able to shoot back, that was okay. Taking care of the simps on the roof, again, it wasn't too bad. The elevator ride down was simple enough, as you just need to hug into a corner, and getting the agitator itself is not bad at all. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the security lockdown, the one section of the game which I deemed impossible. Fighting against a sentry bot with a pool cue is a task that I would not want you to do, especially when you run out of healing items. I was stuck here for a multitude of hours until I figured one little thing out. The clipping in this game is absolutely horrendous, and I used that to my advantage. As it turned out, the pool cue can go through the ramps. My saving grace at the verge of quitting, with the Assaultron bots taken care of with the immense luck of crippling their legs. Victory was only one Chinese hating robot away. The Brotherhood of Steel and I took down the Institute as if they were a hot knife to butter. Maxim's laser minigun went to work, and even the other NPCs turned out to be more useful than the Minutemen. The reactor charge was placed, and the Institute was simply no more. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and don't forget to leave a like and also subscribe if you want to see more content, and let me know down below if there's any specific challenges you would like to see. And until the next one, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and don't forget to go and touch some grass.